Javier Becerra, Chairman of the House Democratic Caucus, pleased to be with you, joined by our Vice Chairman of the Democratic Caucus, Joe Crowley of New York. We just finished a robust conversation in our House Democratic Caucus upon the return of all members this week to get back to business. Well, we hope at least we'll have a chance to do some good work before we recess again. We had a very extensive conversation about what we hope to hear from the President tomorrow, and through a briefing on Thursday, a classified briefing on the situation in Iraq and Syria, to hear more about what the latest is on the developments in Ukraine. And certainly we touched on other subjects as well, including finishing the work of the Congress to get a budget to the President for his signature. Lots to do, and some uncertainty as to where Congress will go. A couple of points I'll make, and then I'll turn it over to the Vice Chairman. I think there was widespread appreciation for the fact that the President has put us in a position to be able to tackle the threat posed by ISIL and the insurgent groups in Iraq, that the President has helped steer the Iraqi government towards a new order to hopefully be more inclusive of the people in the country of Iraq. And now we hope to hear from the President where he intends to go and how he would like Congress to work with him in that regard to protect the American people, the American homeland, and to make sure that we continue forward with our partners and allies in the region to improve the conditions and lives of all those folks in the Middle East who love to do nothing more than what we'd love to do, and that is to have a good job, work, send your kids to a good school so they can do better than you did. And I think that's where we are. Many of us believe that it's important that the President make very clear, we're going to address the threat. But at the same time, at least I believe, if you want to do it right, you can't do it rushed. You can build a strategy, or you can shoot from the hip. You can learn from the mistakes of the Bush wars, or you can doom yourself to repeat them. And I myself don't believe this is a test of our will. I think the President's made it very clear. We will protect every American in every way necessary and do what we need to do. So I don't think this is a test of our will. I think this is a test of our alliance, of our partners, NATO, the Arab League, all those who proclaim to want to see that region move forward. I believe it's a test of whether they're willing to step to the plate the way the President and America has been willing to step to the plate in any number of crises. So many of us believe that the President's words this week will be crucial in helping set the tone of how we move forward as an alliance, as a partnership to tackle these issues, because I believe very few Americans believe that America should be the sheriff for the world, and we need our partners. We will do our share. We will always be there to lead, but we need our share of support from our partners. On the issues more close to home, I think all of us believe that the progress we've seen with job creation, more than 10 million jobs created over the last four and a half years, that's remarkable given where we were before when the President took office, we were watching as Americans hemorrhaged job after job. Some 800,000 Americans lost their job the last month that George Bush was in office, in just 1 month. And so to see 10 million jobs created over the last 54 months, that's remarkable, and we want to see continued progress. For Democrats, the issue is not just of protecting the security of Americans here and abroad, it's making sure the economic security of Americans is assured so that everyone has a good paying job, so that women get paid equally to men for the same kind of work, to make sure that we tackle the issue for those who've been trying hard to find a job even though they lost theirs through no fault of their own, to make sure that young Americans have a chance to go to college and don't go into such hock in debt with loans that they can't go into the profession of their choice because they can't afford the debt. And so those are the things that we believe are crucial for us to tackle, and we should stay here as long as it takes for us to take on all those responsibilities as a Congress. Whether we will, we'll find out from the Republican leadership in the House and what they plan to do, but our concern is more that the politics of shut down, do nothing politics is prevailing more often than not here in the House of Representatives. With that, let me yield now to the Vice Chairman of the Democratic Caucus, Joe Crowley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome back. Welcome back to you all as well. I think the discussion we had within our caucus this morning, particularly as it pertained to the ISIL crisis before us, was a healthy one. And speaking, at least for myself, and I think for most of the members, believe that the actions the President has taken so far has been the right course of action, both from addressing the brutality and the barbaric nature of what ISIL is, as well as from a military standpoint, and bolstering our allies in the region and pushing back on them. That obviously we think more needs to be done, but so far the steps have been appropriate. Really, in terms of addressing domestic issues, although we're just here for, I think now after today will be 10 more days, doesn't leave a great deal of time for us to address the issues the American people are looking for us to address. I've said before that there is enough happening in the world, and I think even more so the argument can be made during the month of August, even more has happened in the world of instability. And the American people are looking for some stability. They're looking for a Congress that acts on behalf of the American people to promote an economic agenda that will provide for even further job creation and development. Despite the lack of movement here in the Republican Congress, as the chairman has said, job creation has been on the rise. We've seen a stock market that is over 17,000 points, and yet there's still a sluggish feeling out there by the American people that the kind of jobs we need to create aren't being created. We need a jobs bill on the floor. We need to have a bill that will provide for equal pay for equal work for all Americans, particularly for women in this country. We need to move forward on an agenda of progress and vision for the American people. That's something the Republican caucus has failed to do, and I think come November the American people will speak loudly to their lack of progress. And with that, I'll turn it back to the chairman.
Questions? First, I think there's no disagreement now that our immigration system is broken. I don't think there's any disagreement as well that we all believe it needs to be fixed. So if you start from that premise, then you work forward and say, well, what do we do next? Well, America's faced, and the president is faced with a recalcitrant Republican Congress that is unwilling to fix the broken immigration system. This broken immigration system is based on these laws that are broken. And you can't change the law without Congress. But Congress is, at least House Republicans, have decided not to do anything. Senate acted on a bipartisan basis. 68 votes out of 100 said, yes, let's fix the broken immigration system. Passed the bill about a year and 4 months ago. We're still waiting in the House for the Republicans just to give us a vote. So the president said he's going to do what he can to try to manage a broken immigration system and make it work better. That's tough to do when you can only use executive authority. But he has done some of those things. We're no longer deporting young men and women who have studied here or are prepared to go to college, serve in our military. Those dreamers are now here, although only temporarily do they have this protection because it's only as good as the executive authority lasting that the president issued on this program called DACA. So I'd say this. On the one hand, the good news is that the president reaffirmed that he will act under the law to fix what he can in this broken immigration system using his executive authority. On the other hand, the difficult side of that for many of us is that that won't happen soon enough because we're going to wait a couple more months. Bottom line, is so long as we're moving forward and making the system work better, that's progress. And the president is committed to do what he can if Republicans in the Congress won't act. He's committed to do what he can to make the system work better. And so at the end of the day, it's progress that counts. And I think we're all looking forward to working with the president to make progress on fixing our broken immigration system. Well, it's not a matter of supporting or not. It's a matter of moving forward. And the president said he's looking to do executive action. He's going to wait a couple months to do so. He's reviewing the recommendations that were provided. And I fully believe that the president will follow through and continue to do what he can, as he did with DACA, for the Dreamers to make our immigration system work better in the absence of Republican action here in Congress to fix a broken immigration system. Again, I wish he could do more, given that Republicans have decided not to do anything on immigration. But he's limited on what he can do based on what the law allows him to do, but I look forward to seeing him do it.
Kind of give us a sense of where the caucus is on the idea of an authorization. I mean, on ISIL. There's been an awful lot of members I've talked to on both sides of the aisle who have said, well, one member put it to me last night. They said everybody wants to do something, but nobody knows what that is. And that could be the challenge, obviously, in any authorization is that everybody would differ on what the objective is. But that said, do people want to curb? You get the sense from your caucus. Do people want to curb the president so there's a parameter there? Other people say, well, yes, we're going to have this letter writing campaign every 5 days. We need to have authorization if this is going to take Schiff said yesterday this may take years. Give us where this, the different factions of your caucus.
And here I think Joe and I hopefully can give you a sense because, I mean, we've been at this stuff since 9/11, actually before then, and you can still see how it is a difficult and long-term challenge that we will address. Let me tell you where I stand and what I think I heard. I believe I heard every single member who spoke say, address the threat. And that would be my main message to the president. Address the threat. How we address the threat is where the conversation gets a little bit more complicated. Some would like to see a vote by Congress to set out the authority for the president. Others believe that, as you just mentioned, it might take quite some time to figure out what exactly the authority would look like to detail it because the devil is in the detail. But I don't think there's any doubt. In the Democratic caucus, members were saying, address the threat. And my message to the president would be, address the threat. Tell us what you are going to do. Don't ask us what we think you should do. Just tell us what you're going to do. And Congress, all of us, 535 in the House and the Senate, have to decide. Is the president taking us into war? In which case, he would need to ask Congress for that. If you don't think it's war, if it's a military action directed to address a threat, which under Article 2 of the Constitution he is allowed to do, then we should monitor. It just depends on where you fall on that. If what the president proposes or is doing crosses a line into war. My own view is that what he is doing is not tantamount to war, and that he should do what he believes is right. And if any of us in Congress believe that he has crossed that threshold into war, then let's have that authorization on that. I think the War Powers Act requires him to consult and advise. I think he's done that, and my sense is that most Americans want the president to continue to address the threat. As I said before, what pleases me is that the way he's done this. As I said, you can do it right or you can do it rushed. And I believe the president has done it right. ISIL is on the retreat in many areas, and that's a result of America's actions in concert with the Iraqi government.
Is there war fatigue? Do you think, though, that members of Congress, both parties, have the stomach for an authorization if it comes to that?
Let me, Joe, respond generally and to that, and then I can respond.
I think I already mentioned my position in terms of my feelings on this. I think certainly within our caucus, there is quite varying views on all of this. The big question, I think, for many of our colleagues is boots on the ground and what that constitutes, as well as I think, as the chairman has mentioned, just how long a conflict this will be. But I don't think there's much debate whatsoever within our caucus as to the threat that ISIL presents to the region and to the United States as well. And we look to the Secretary of Homeland Defense as well as the Joint Chiefs and the military response system. I think the President has worked and has been diligent in terms of addressing the issue in the immediate sense. And we look forward to hearing back from the President when our leaders meet with him later today, as well as when he addresses the American people as to how he's going to move forward. But so far, I think he has adequately and in the short term addressing the issue of ISIL, both from attacking them from their for the barbaric nature of what they've done, as well as from a military standpoint to bolster our allies within the region, both the Kurds as well as the new Iraqi government. Allow that government to get up and running and really create the coalition that's necessary for a lasting peace within Iraq between the Sunni and the Shia within Iraq.
But back to my point there, is there the stomach for an authorization if it comes to that? And you had expressed what you were there. You said, are there things people can learn from the Bush errors? What about that?
There's no question we all continue to learn, especially for those of us who were here since 9/11 and the events that took place after that. I think all of us have a lot to, have learned a lot. But as I said before, I actually believe at some point, I've been here long enough to know that at some point there will be a vote on something in relation to the president's actions. When that will be, I think you're speculating as well. We don't know at this point in time. And I think each of us will deal with that when the time comes. Each of us will vote with the way in which we believe is in the interest of our constituency, but maybe more importantly, what's in the interest of the country.
I do want to add on this because when I talk to folks back home, and actually generally I was in several states over August, Americans are weary, but they're not weak. Americans want us to do it right. They don't want us to do it rushed. And that's a lesson of the mistakes in the Iraq War from the past. And so I don't think there's an American who would say, oh, no, let's cower from our responsibility as a world leader to try to help a region of the world. But Americans are saying, but don't do it alone again. Don't go in there and think you can just, because we're Americans, we'll take care of it, with the sheriff in town, and we'll take care of everything. Make sure that the folks there who stand to gain the most, the Iraqis, the Arab countries around the region, Iran, all of them step to the plate as well. So weary Americans? Yes, Americans are weary. But Americans aren't weak. I've not heard a soul throughout America who said, let's just pack it up. But I do hear people say, show me there's a reason to do more. And that's why I've said in the past, the day that that Iraqi Sunni soldier will protect an Iraqi Shia civilian, or the Iraqi Shia soldier will protect an Iraqi Sunni civilian, is the day Americans may have a deeper role. But I think the Iraqis have to decide if they want to be Iraqis. Right now they're Sunni, Shia, Kurd, Christian, all the rest. And so maybe this new government will prove that they do wish to be an Iraqi people, an Iraqi country.
Can I just ask one other point on the weariness of Americans? I think they're weary of a Congress that will leave in September touting the fact that they didn't shut off the lights of Congress or the building here as an accomplishment, that somehow we'll pass a continuing resolution and all's right with the world. That has to change. I think the American people ought to expect and do expect more from their Congress, and the inability of us to act on the big issues of the day facing us as a nation is troublesome to the American people. But as I said before, there's enough going on in the world in terms of these crises that we ought not be creating more, whether it's on the shutdown of government or the not paying of our debts. Those kinds of things need to end, and the Republican caucus and their conference needs to come to the table and work in a bipartisan way to really find solutions on immigration reform, on the jobs bill, on issues that Americans really are concerned about as well. Internationally, we have our concerns, but we're also concerned about what's happening here at home, and they don't see a Congress and Republican Congress working on the issues that they care about.
Yes.
Was there any discussion on the CR and timeline, and do you feel that the reauthorization of the Exim Bank should be in the CR?
We did discuss the continuing resolution, the funding of the government. Our concern that Republicans would use the budget as another tool again to extract concessions from the president on things unrelated to the budget are always come up. We don't want to see Republicans shut down the government again. We understand the Republicans today were meeting this morning to discuss what they would do with the continuing resolution. We hope they are planning to do a continuing resolution that deals only with the budget and doesn't start to inject their social agenda, which causes the no votes to rise and leads to a government shutdown. And we're hoping that the Republicans will present us with what was agreed to last year to avoid these fiscal crises, and that was clean continuing resolutions where they would not infect these bills with their social agenda items. And so we'll see what the Republicans on the House floor decide to put up. They do control the House, and we have to see what there is. But I think most of us are prepared to say no to bills that have little to do with the budget and more to do with their social agenda. If they do a clean continuing resolution, I believe they'll find that Democrats are ready to provide the votes to keep our government funded the way it should be.
I think the cleaner the resolution, obviously, the more chance for a bipartisan support for that resolution. On the Exim Bank, I am for a long-term extension, not a short-term extension, not just a couple months, so we can dither once again and maybe create an atmosphere in which I think the extreme right wing within the Republican Party may be successful in shutting down what has been a very successful entity within our U.S. government, an entity that, since its creation in the 1930s, has actually created jobs in the United States, has helped to leverage exports of American products overseas. I have a message to the Republican to base. Start talking to your members, because they obviously don't understand how important this is for business in the United States, how important this is for export business men and women here in the United States, that the Republican caucus understand that what they're doing is playing with American jobs and investment overseas, and the ability of the leverage that is created through the Exim Bank to do that. And that message clearly hasn't gotten through yet, because we're still dithering with this. I want at least a 7-year extender on the Exim Bank included. I'd like to see it in the CR to take this issue off the agenda. By the way, this is not the only issue. We have terrorism risk insurance that is still lingering out there. We have policies that will expire at the end of this year, unless we get a more long-term solution. You're going to see an impact on jobs in here in America, because buildings will not be able to be built because it will not have terrorism risk insurance. And Lord knows what it does in terms of the extension of already existing buildings and those leases. These are major, major issues, not just for New York and big cities, but all around the country as well. And their failure to move on it is going to have an impact on job creation here in the United States.
Any final thoughts? I will say that most of us agree on the Democratic caucus that playing politics with the Exim Bank is it just upside down when it comes to job creation. When we have American companies that are trying to compete abroad to create more jobs that will help Americans get to work here domestically because they do more business abroad, it would be crazy to try to kill a program that helps create jobs here in America as well. Competition is fierce, so many of us believe that we should not be seeing the political games being played with Exim Bank the way we see them right now, and that there should be a long-term authorization of that bank before we hit the cliff. Can I mention one last thing? It's hard for me to understand right now, with the president prepared to talk to congressional leaders about what we should be doing in the Middle East, that we have on the floor this week a bill that would condemn the president for having saved the life of an American soldier, Sergeant Bo Bergdahl. There's a resolution that would be put on the floor today or this week by Republicans in the House to condemn the president for having saved the life of an American soldier who was being held in captivity. Perhaps some of my colleagues haven't been watching the news with the beheading of James Foley, with the beheading of Stephen Sotloff. Some of these folks are pretty serious out there, and they intend to harm Americans where they can. Bo Bergdahl was held by some of the same kind of lowlife that committed these beheadings. And the president did everything he could to bring Sergeant Bergdahl home safely. We have a resolution on the floor of the House of Representatives to condemn the president for having saved the life of an American soldier. As the president said, it wasn't easy. They didn't know they'd succeed, but thank God they did. And today, Sergeant Bergdahl is alive. I believe the families of Mr. Foley and Mr. Sotloff would love to be able to say the same thing. That just shows how upside down House Republicans are in their agenda for the House of Representatives. We need to come together instead of tear each other apart, because there are enough folks out there in the world that want to tear us apart. And I would hope that we would take a signal from the president and say, as we move forward together, let's do it right, not rushed, and let's do it as a team, not apart. And so I intend to vote against that resolution on the floor, but more than that, I intend to speak out against those who would try to make politics out of something so very precious, and that is protecting and saving American lives where we can. With that, we thank you for having come and joined us, and welcome back.